Welcome to a sun-drenched, olive-scented world where philosophers bicker, statues skip trousers, and daily life in ancient Greece could exhaust you by noon. Picture this. You're in Athens, 450 BCE, where the cradle of European civilization rocks with hardship beneath its marble glory. Before we dive into this time travel tale, gently tap that like button and subscribe if you fancy bedtime stories that blend history with a smirk. Drop a comment. Where are you watching from? London, Paris, Berlin? What's the clock saying? It's thrilling to know who's joining us under the stars. So pull the curtains, sip your evening tea, and settle in as we wander through a day that'll make your modern woes feel like a holiday. From sweaty tunics to Socrates' nagging questions, this is your ticket to ancient Greece. Buckle up. It's gloriously brutal. Imagine this. The first rays of dawn creep over Athens, 450 BCE, and you're jolted awake, not by the shrill buzz of an alarm clock, but by the relentless heat of a sun that's already turning your home into a slow-cooking oven. You're not nestled in a cozy European flat with soft linens and a thermostat. Instead, you're sprawled on a thin straw mat in a house of sun-baked mud bricks or rough-hewn stone, the walls radiating warmth like a grumpy dragon hoarding its fire. Welcome to ancient Greece, where the cradle of European civilization rocks you awake with a harsh reality check. Your home, if you can call it that, is less a sanctuary and more a testament to survival. As you blink the sleep from your eyes, you realize this is no Airbnb with Wi-Fi and a coffee machine. This is a world where comfort is a myth, and every day begins with a battle against the elements. Your house, perched on a dusty Athenian street, is a modest affair. Think less Parthenon elegance and more cramped utilitarian box. The walls, slapped together from mud bricks, dried under the merciless Aegean sun, are sturdy enough to keep out stray goats, but useless against the summer's heat or winter's bite. Small, glassless windows, covered only by rickety wooden shutters, let in slivers of light and whatever breeze the gods deign to send. But don't expect a refreshing gust. More likely, you'll get a whiff of the street outside, where dust, donkey dung, and market chatter mingle into a pungent morning greeting. Inside, there's no insulation, no ceiling fan, no trace of the modern luxuries you take for granted in London or Lisbon. The stone floor feels like a skillet in July, and in winter, it's an ice slab that chills your bones through the thin cloak you call a blanket. You're not alone in this oven-cum-freezer. Your entire family, parents, siblings, perhaps a cousin or two, shares this single room, sleeping, eating, and arguing in a space that makes a Parisian studio flat seem palatial. Oh, and there's the family goat, snoring in the corner, because apparently personal space is a concept the Greeks reserved for philosophers, not peasants. You rise early, not out of discipline, but because lying on that straw-stuffed mattress, more a sack of prickly ambition than a bed, is no longer bearable once the sun climbs. If you're lucky, the lice left you alone last night, but don't count on it. They're as much a part of this world as olive trees and oracles. You roll off your mat, your back already protesting, and glance around. The room is dim, the air thick with the scent of dust and yesterday's bread. There's no wardrobe, no mirror, just a wooden chest holding a few tunics and a clay pot for water, if you remembered to fetch it yesterday. In modern Europe, you'd stumble to the kitchen for a cappuccino or flick on the heater. Here, you're squinting at the dawn, praying the gods aren't in a mood to make your day harder than it already is. And trust me, they're rarely generous. The shock hits you like a Spartan spear. There's no running water, no tap, no shower, no flush toilet waiting to make your morning civilized. If you want water, you'll have to earn it, trudging to the public fountain in the agora, or if you're in a rural village, hauling it from a well half a mile away. Picture yourself, bleary-eyed and barefoot, balancing a heavy clay amphora on your shoulder, weaving through streets that double as the city's trash heap. One misstep, and that amphora shatters, along with your dignity and a week's worth of effort. The fountain itself is a social hub where women gossip, men argue politics, and stray dogs eye your ankles. But it's no Instagram-worthy scene. It's a chaotic, sweaty ordeal, and you're already exhausted before breakfast. Back home, you splash cold water on your face, not because it's refreshing, but because it's all you've got. Hygiene, that's a ritual for later, and it's less about cleanliness and more about survival. This is your wake-up call in ancient Greece, where the day begins with a reminder that life is a grind. You're not just waking up, you're stepping into a world where every moment tests your resilience. The Greeks didn't have espresso machines or central heating, yet they built temples that still stand in Athens and wrote ideas that echo in universities from Oxford to Vienna. As you shake off the grogginess, you can't help but marvel at their grit. Your modern life, with its warm showers and electric kettles, feels like a luxury the gods themselves couldn't dream up. But here's the kicker. This brutal morning is just the start. The sun's barely up, and you're already sweating, aching, and wondering how anyone survived this. Spoiler alert, they didn't just survive, they thrived, laying the foundations of European culture while dodging goats and sunburns. So take a deep breath, and let's stumble into the rest of your day in ancient Greece. Now let's linger a moment on that house, because it's not just a backdrop, it's a character in this story, as unyielding as a Spartan drill sergeant. These homes, whether in bustling Athens or a quiet village, were built for function, not flair. The mud brick walls, sometimes whitewashed to reflect the sun's glare, were practical but far from cozy. In summer, they soaked up heat like a sponge, turning your home into a sauna where sleep was more a suggestion than a reality. In winter, those same walls became a freezer, and your only defense was a woolen cloak that doubled as a blanket, a scarf, and frankly, a cry for help. The roof, often made of clay tiles or thatch, leaked when the gods sent rain, and the floor, packed dirt or stone, offered no comfort for your bare feet. Furniture? A wooden stool if you were lucky, maybe a low table for meals. No plush sofas, no memory foam mattresses, just the raw, unfiltered reality of a world where survival trumped style. Step outside, and the street is no kinder. The narrow lanes of Athens twist like a labyrinth, paved with dust and the occasional cobblestone if the city felt generous. They're alive with the chaos of daily life, merchants shouting, donkeys braying, and children darting underfoot. The air carries the tang of olive oil, sweat, and the faint whiff of sacrifices from a nearby temple. You're not in a postcard perfect Greece with gleaming columns and serene philosophers. This is the gritty underbelly where the average citizen, a farmer, a potter, or a weaver, wrestles with the elements just to start the day. Yet this is also the world that birthed democracy, theater, and ideas that still shape Berlin's lecture halls and Rome's museums. The contrast is stark. Your modern European life, with its heated floors and instant coffee, feels like a distant dream, while these Greeks turned hardship into history. As you stand in your doorway, clutching that precious amphora of water, you realize the scale of the challenge. Every task, from waking to washing, is a labor. The Greeks didn't have the luxury of hitting snooze or ordering takeout. They woke with the sun, worked with their hands, and lived with a tenacity that makes your daily commute seem like a spa day. Their homes, crude as they were, sheltered families who argued, laughed, and dreamed under the same roof. These were the people who carved out a civilization while sleeping on straw and dodging wayward livestock. You can't help but feel a pang of respect. Your morning might begin with a smartphone alarm and a hot shower, but theirs began with sheer willpower. And as you step into the dusty street, ready to face the next ordeal, you're already wondering, how did they do it? The answer lies in their mindset. The Greeks didn't just endure, they found meaning in the struggle. While you're grumbling about a lukewarm latte in Paris, they were hauling water and praying to capricious gods, yet still found time to debate justice in the agora or carve statues that outlast empires. Their homes, basic and brutal, were the foundations of a culture that gave Europe its first taste of democracy and philosophy. As you navigate this imagined day, you'll see that every sunburn, every aching muscle, is a reminder of their resilience. You're not just waking up in ancient Greece, you're waking up to a world where survival was an art form, and the Greeks were its masters. So let's move on to the next challenge, fetching water and trying to stay clean in a world that laughs at the idea of a hot bath. You've barely shaken off the grogginess of your straw mat slumber in your sun-scorched Athenian home, and already the day demands more from you than a double espresso could handle. The sun's climbing, painting the sky over Athens, 450 BCE, with a golden glow that promises another sweltering day. But before you can even think about breakfast or a moment's peace, there's a task that makes your morning commute in Berlin or Barcelona seem like a leisurely stroll, fetching water. In this corner of ancient Greece, the cradle of European civilization, there's no tap to twist, no kettle to flick on for your morning tea. Water is a prize you earn, and the journey to get it is a sweaty, shoulder-aching odyssey. As you step out of your mud brick hovel, clutching a clay amphora heavier than your dreams of a hot shower, you're about to discover that cleanliness in ancient Greece is less a luxury and more a cruel jest from the gods. Picture yourself stumbling out into the dusty streets of Athens, the air already thick with the tang of olive oil, sweat, and the faint whiff of yesterday's market fish. Your home, with its stingy windows and goat-infested corners, offered no running water, no sink, no hint of the plumbing that graces every flat from Lisbon to Stockholm. If you want water, to drink, to cook, or to attempt some semblance of hygiene, you've got to fetch it yourself. The nearest source is the public fountain in the Agora, a good half-mile trek through streets that double as the city's rubbish tip. Or, if you're in a rural village, you're hauling from a well that's more a test of endurance than a convenience. The amphora, a clay jug as unwieldy as a toddler throwing a tantrum, digs into your shoulder. One wrong step, and it shatters, spilling your hard-won water and a week's worth of back pain across the sun-baked ground. This isn't just a chore, it's a high-stakes mission where failure means parched throats and dirty faces for the whole family. As you weave through the bustling streets, the agora comes into view, a chaotic marketplace where merchants hawk olives, potters argue over prices, and stray dogs eye your ankles like their breakfast. The fountain itself is no serene oasis. It's a hub of noise and jostling where women exchange gossip sharper than a Spartan spear, and men debate politics with the fervor of a modern football match. You queue up, amphora in hand, praying the line moves before the sun turns your tunic into a second skin. The water, when you finally get it, isn't exactly Evian. It's murky, sometimes tinged with the grit of the city, and you're silently hoping it's not carrying the kind of curse that sends you running to a priest for an exorcism. Back home, you set the amphora down, your shoulders screaming, and realize this is just the prelude to the real challenge. Trying to stay clean in a world that laughs at the idea of a proper bath. Here's the shock that'll jolt you awake faster than a London rush hour train. Hygiene in ancient Greece isn't about feeling fresh, it's about scraping by. Forget the gleaming spa experiences of Paris or the steamy showers of Helsinki. Your morning bath is a splash of cold water from that hard-earned amphora, dribbled over your face in a corner of your one-room home, while your family and that blasted goat watch on. There's no privacy, no frothy soap, no fluffy towel waiting to wrap you in comfort. Instead, you reach for a jar of olive oil, the all-purpose elixir of the ancient world. You slather it over your skin, not to moisturize, but to trap the dust and sweat that cling to you like uninvited guests. Then comes the strigil, a curved bronze blade that looks like it belongs in a butcher's shop, not a bathroom. You scrape the oil off, dragging away the grime in a process that's less self-care and more self-inflicted archaeology. It's like slathering yourself in salad dressing and then shaving it off with a blunt knife. Glamorous it is not. And your teeth? Don't even dream of a toothbrush or minty paste. If you're lucky, you might chew on a twig or swish some vinegar around your mouth, hoping it does more than just sting. Most likely, you just grit your teeth, literally, and accept that dental hygiene is a gift from the gods, and they're not feeling generous today. Body odor? It's as universal as the agora's chatter. Perfumes like myrrh or rose oil exist, but they're for the elite, not for you, the average Athenian trudging through the heat. Your tunic, already stiff with yesterday's sweat, hasn't seen a wash since the last festival, and even then, washing meant beating it against a river rock like it owed you money. The result is a uniquely Greek bouquet of musk, dust, and desperation that follows you like a loyal dog. In this world, hygiene isn't about smelling good. It's about being slightly less revolting than the day before. Let's pause to consider the sheer tenacity it took to face this every morning. While you're grumbling about a slow Wi-Fi signal in Vienna, the ancient Greeks were hauling water across town just to splash their faces. Their homes had no pipes, no drains, no trace of the sanitation systems that keep modern Europe humming. Yet these were the same people who built the Parthenon, whose ideas about democracy and beauty still echo in the halls of Brussels and Rome. You can't help but feel a twinge of awe. Your morning routine, with its hot showers and electric toothbrushes, feels like a gift from Zeus himself compared to this. But the Greeks didn't just endure, they turned necessity into ingenuity. The public fountains, chaotic as they were feats of engineering, channeling water from distant springs to keep cities like Athens alive. The strigil, for all its brutality, was a clever way to stay clean without wasting precious water. Now imagine you're back at the fountain, amphora filled, shoulders aching, and the sun climbing higher. The agora buzzes around you, a living tapestry of shouts, smells, and scurrying feet. Women balance jugs on their heads, their chatter weaving tales of love and betrayal. Men haggle over figs, their voices rising like a chorus in one of Sophocles' plays. You're not just fetching water, you're part of a ritual, a daily dance that binds the community together. But don't get too romantic. The water you've hauled might keep you alive, but it's no guarantee of cleanliness or health. Disease lurks in every unfiltered drop, and the gods, as always, are watching, ready to smite you for a misstep. You trudge home, the amphora's weight a constant reminder of your place in this unforgiving world. Your family waits, expecting you to deliver not just water, but survival itself. This morning ritual, brutal as it is, reveals the heart of ancient Greek life. Resilience born of necessity. While you might long for a steaming bath in a Copenhagen spa, the Greeks made do with what they had, turning every chore into a testament to their endurance. Their cities thrived not because life was easy, but because they refused to let hardship define them. They hauled water, scraped their skin raw, and still found time to debate philosophy and carve marble into art that outlasts empires. As you set down your amphora, your arms trembling, you realize the true shock. This was just the beginning of their day. You're already exhausted, but the Greeks, they were just getting started, ready to face a world that demanded everything and gave little in return. So, let's move on to the next hurdle, breakfast, or rather the lack thereof, in a world where even eating was a test of grit. You've survived the sweaty ordeal of waking up in your mud brick oven of a home and the grueling trek to fetch water under the Athenian sun, 450 BCE. Your shoulders ache from hauling that clay amphora, and your tunic is already clinging to you like a jealous lover. But before you can catch your breath, your stomach growls, demanding fuel for another day in this unforgiving cradle of European civilization. In your modern life, you'd be reaching for a croissant in Paris or a full English breakfast in London, savoring the aroma of coffee or the comfort of a fruit-laden muesli. Here in ancient Greece, breakfast is less a meal and more a test of endurance, a stark reminder that the gods have a twisted sense of humor. Welcome to a morning feast so sparse, it makes a minimalist diet look like a Roman orgy. As you shuffle toward the wooden table in your cramped, goat-adjacent home, brace yourself for a culinary experience that's about as exciting as a lecture on pottery shards. The centerpiece of your breakfast is a lump of barley bread called maza, a dense, chewy slab that's more punishment than nourishment. Picture a flat, grayish disc baked on hot stones or in the ashes of last night's fire, with the texture of a sun-baked brick and the flavor of the dirt it was kneaded near. This isn't the warm, crusty baguette you'd pick up in Lisbon or the fluffy scone of a Dublin cafe. No, maza is the kind of bread that could double as a doorstop, so tough you're half convinced it's plotting to crack your teeth. You tear off a piece, the effort making your jaw protest, and dunk it into a clay cup of wine so watered down it's basically grape-flavored regret. Why wine? Because the water you hold from the agora's fountain might be laced with more curses than a sailor's tavern, and boiling it isn't a thing here. In ancient Greece, everyone from children to elders sips this diluted wine. not for a buzz, but for survival. The irony is rich. The same Greeks who gave us symposiums with flowing wine and poetic odes serve you a breakfast that's a masterclass in misery. If you're hoping for a side dish to brighten this grim affair, think again. Your table, if you even have one, is a rickety slab of wood, not a polished oak number from a Stockholm furniture shop. There's no butter, no jam, no hint of the honey-drizzled yogurt you'd find in a Mediterranean cafe today. If you're lucky, and let's be honest, luck is as rare as a quiet day in the Agora, you might have a couple of figs shriveled from yesterday's market, or a handful of olives that taste like they've been marinating in despair. Goat cheese? Only if you're one of the fortunate few with a herd and a knack for bartering. For most Athenians, breakfast is maza, and maza alone, a meal so utilitarian it makes a protein bar seem like a Michelin-starred dessert. You chew slowly, not out of mindfulness, but because rushing might cost you a molar. The flies buzzing around your bread are bolder than a Spartan warrior, and swatting them feels like a losing battle. You're not eating to enjoy, you're eating to endure. Here's the shock that'll make you choke on that stale barley brick. In many Greek households, women and children don't even get to eat with the men. If you're a woman, you're waiting in the wings, relegated to the shadows of your one-room home, while the men, your father, husband, or brothers, take the first crack at the meager spread. By the time it's your turn, the bread is even staler, the wine more diluted, and the flies have claimed squatters' rights. It's not just the food that's disappointing. It's the weight, the hierarchy, the quiet humiliation of being second in line for a meal that's barely worth eating. Imagine sitting in a cozy Viennese cafe, watching others savor their pastries while you're handed crumbs. This is the daily reality for many Greek women, a stark reminder that even the act of eating carries the weight of social order. You swallow your pride along with the maza, knowing this is just the start of a day that demands everything you've got. Let's linger on this scene, because it's not just about food, it's about the rhythm of survival in ancient Greece. Your home, with its dirt floor and snoring goat, is no place for leisurely brunches. Meals are quick, practical, eaten standing or squatting, with no forks, no chairs, no trace of the dining etiquette you'd find in a Rome trattoria. The bread is broken by hand, the wine sipped from a shared cup, and the whole affair is over in minutes. You're not savoring flavors, you're fueling up for a day of labor, whether it's tending fields, weaving cloth, or dodging philosophers in the agora. The Greeks didn't have the luxury of lingering over cappuccinos or debating avocado toast. Their breakfast was a means to an end, a gritty necessity in a world where hunger was a constant shadow. Yet these same people, chewing through their joyless maza, went on to write tragedies that still move audiences in Athens' theaters and philosophies that echo in Berlin's lecture halls. As you force down another bite, the contrast with your modern life hits like a thunderbolt from Zeus. In Paris, you'd be sipping espresso, the aroma of fresh bread wafting through the air. In London, you'd tuck into eggs and bacon, maybe scrolling through your phone for the day's news. Here, your news is the neighbor's shout about a lost goat, and your luxury is a maza that hasn't gone moldy. The Greeks didn't have supermarkets or refrigeration, no corner bakeries, or instant oatmeal. Their food came from sweat-soaked fields, bartered markets, or the rare kindness of a beekeeper who might trade a smidge of honey for a favor. You can't help but feel a pang of gratitude for your modern kitchen, where a flick of a switch brings hot water and a fridge holds more than flies and despair. But there's also a grudging respect for these Greeks who turned scarcity into strength, building a civilization on the back of meals that would make a modern European weep. Now picture the broader world of this breakfast. The agora, where you fetched your water, is also where your barley came from, ground by hand in a mortar, or traded from a farmer who fought the same sun you're cursing. The wine, diluted as it is, was pressed from grapes grown on rocky hillsides, tended by people who knew hunger as intimately as you're getting to know it now. This meal, meager as it is a thread in the tapestry of Greek life, connecting you to the land, the community, and the gods who might, or might not, bless your harvest. Every bite of maza is a reminder of the labor it took to grow, grind, and bake it, a process that makes your weekly grocery run seem like a holiday. The Greeks didn't just eat, they survived, and in that survival, they found time to carve out ideas that still shape the world from Brussels to Barcelona. You finish your breakfast, your jaw aching, your stomach barely appeased. The flies have won this round, and your tunic is now a canvas of crumbs and sweat. You glance at your family, huddled in this one-room home, and realize this is as good as it gets. The men move on to their day, perhaps to the fields or the assembly, while women and children linger, their hunger a quiet companion. In this moment, you feel the weight of their resilience. These Greeks, with their stone-hard bread and watered-down wine, didn't just feed their bodies. They fed a culture that gave us democracy, theater, and the seeds of modern Europe. As you wipe your hands on your tunic, you're struck by a thought. Your morning latte might be a miracle, but their ability to thrive on so little is nothing short of divine. So let's push forward to the next challenge, getting dressed in a world where fashion is as brutal as breakfast. You've survived waking up in a sun-baked Athenian hovel, hauled water through the chaotic streets, and choked down a lump of barley bread that could double as a weapon. The sun is climbing higher over Athens, 450 BCE, and your tunic is already a sweaty second skin, clinging to you like a bad decision. Your stomach's barely settled from that joyless breakfast, but the day doesn't care. It's time to get dressed and face the world outside. In your modern European life, you'd slip into tailored jeans or a chic jacket, maybe checking your reflection in a Stockholm boutique mirror before stepping out. Here, in the cradle of European civilization, dressing is less about style and more about survival, a daily wrestling match with linen and the relentless Aegean sun. As you reach for your meager wardrobe, prepare for a fashion experience that's as unforgiving as the gods themselves, where one wrong move could leave you exposed, literally. Your closet, if you can call it that, is a wooden chest in the corner of your one-room home, next to the snoring goat and the ever-present dust. Inside, you find a chiton or himation, essentially oversized rectangles of linen or wool that make a modern bedsheet look like haute couture. These aren't tailored garments from a Paris atelier. They're crude, shapeless swathes you drape over your body, pinning them with a bronze brooch or tying them with a rope belt. The chiton, a short tunic for men or a longer one for women, is your go-to, but don't expect a snug fit. It's loose, scratchy, and prone to slipping, especially if a gust of wind decides to play tricks. Here's the shock that'll make you clutch your coffee mug in Berlin. There's no underwear, no briefs, no bras, nothing to keep your modesty intact if the breeze gets cheeky. You're one pin away from a wardrobe malfunction that would make an Athenian gossip stay. As you wrap the linen around you, the process feels less like dressing and more like wrestling a toga-shaped octopus. The fabric, often undyed in a drab off-white, is stiff with sweat and dust, having been washed, optimistically, once since the last festival. If you're among the lucky few with a bit of coin, your tunic might boast a faint purple or saffron hue, but for most, it's the color of resignation, stained with the grime of daily life. You tie it tightly, praying the brooch holds, because a loose pin in the agora is a social disaster waiting to happen. In modern Europe, you'd slip on a coat to fend off the chill or sunscreen to dodge a sunburn. Here, you're at the mercy of the elements, with no defense against the sun that's already plotting to roast your shoulders redder than a Mediterranean tomato. Footwear is another grim chapter. If you're wealthy, you might own a pair of leather sandals, hand-stitched, but as forgiving as a Spartan drill sergeant. They're flimsy, offering little protection against the scorching stones or the muck of Athens' streets, where donkey dung and market scraps form a treacherous obstacle course. For most, though, you're barefoot, your soles kissing sun-baked cobblestones or squelching through whatever the agora's left behind. Imagine strolling through Rome's historic center in July, barefoot, dodging tourist litter and stray cats. That's your daily commute. No hats, no sunglasses, no SPF 50 to shield you from the Aegean sun, which burns with a vengeance that makes a Nordic summer seem like a myth. Your skin, already prickling with heat, is a canvas for sunburns that would send you running to a pharmacy in Vienna. Step outside, and the streets of Athens hit you like a slap from Zeus. The narrow lanes twist like a drunken poet's verse, paved with dust and the occasional cobblestone if the city felt generous. Merchants shout, donkeys bray, and children dart underfoot, their laughter mingling with the clatter of pottery and the distant hum of temple prayers. The air is thick with the scent of olive oil, sweat, and the faint tang of sacrifices wafting from a nearby altar. This isn't the postcard Greece of gleaming columns and serene philosophers. It's a gritty, chaotic world where every step tests your endurance. You're not just walking, you're navigating a labyrinth where one wrong turn could land you in a pile of something you'd rather not name. The Greeks, though, took it in stride, their bare feet or flimsy sandals carrying them through a day that makes your morning jog in Amsterdam feel like a holiday. Let's pause to soak in the absurdity of this wardrobe. In your modern life, you'd spend minutes choosing an outfit, maybe matching a scarf to your shoes or checking the weather app before stepping out. In ancient Greece, your fashion choices are a single piece of linen and a prayer that it stays put. The Khitan and Himation, for all their simplicity, were practical for a world where survival trumped style. They were light enough for the heat, versatile enough to double as a blanket, and cheap enough for even the poorest Athenian to afford. Yet they were also a daily gamble, a flimsy shield against wind, sun, and prying eyes. You can't help but chuckle at the thought of a Milan fashionista trying to navigate the agora in one of these, their Instagram dreams shattered by a single gust. The real marvel, though, is how the Greeks turned this sartorial struggle into a cultural cornerstone. These were the same people who, wrapped in their shapeless tunics, debated democracy in the assembly and sculpted statues that still grace museums from London to Athens. Their clothing, basic as it was, didn't define them, their ideas did. While you might spend hours curating an outfit for a night out in Barcelona, the Greeks threw on their chitons and got to work building a civilization. Their resilience shines through in every loose pin and sunburned shoulder, a testament to a people who didn't let discomfort stop them from shaping the foundations of European thought. Your modern wardrobe, with its endless options and climate-controlled comfort, feels like a luxury the gods themselves couldn't fathom. As you step into the street, your chaton flapping precariously, you're struck by the public nature of life here. In ancient Greece, modesty wasn't always a priority. Men trained naked in the gymnasium, their bodies on display without a hint of shame. Politicians delivered speeches in tunics so thin they might as well have been transparent, and no one batted an eye. You pass a group of athletes heading to the gym, their laughter echoing, and you're suddenly hyper-aware of your own flimsy attire. One wrong move, and you're the talk of the agora, your wardrobe malfunction immortalized in gossip, sharper than a philosopher's wit. Yet this openness was part of Greek culture, a stark contrast to the buttoned-up propriety of a modern European office. Their lack of inhibition, born of necessity and heat, was as much a part of their identity as their temples and tragedies. Now imagine the broader context of this morning ritual. Your chiton, for all its flaws, is a product of labor, woven by women in homes like yours, dyed with rare pigments if you're lucky, or left plain if you're not. The leather for your sandals, if you have them, came from tanners who toiled under the same sun now scorching your skin. Every thread, every stitch connects you to a community that thrives on shared effort. The streets you walk, filthy as they are, lead to the agora, where ideas and goods are traded with equal fervor. This is the world that gave us the Parthenon, the plays of Sophocles, and the philosophies of Plato, all while dressed in what amounts to a glorified bedsheet. You can't help but feel a grudging respect for these Greeks, who turned scarcity into splendor, their simple garments a canvas for a culture that still dazzles the world. As you adjust your chiton, dodging a stray donkey, in the sun's relentless glare, you realize the true shock. Dressing in ancient Greece wasn't just about covering your body, it was about embracing a life where every detail, from fabric to footwear, was a battle against the elements. Your modern life, with its air-conditioned malls and weatherproof boots, feels like a gift from the gods. Yet these Greeks, with their flimsy tunics and bare feet, didn't just survive, they thrived, their ideas outlasting empires and their art inspiring generations from Berlin to Rome. You're already sweating, your sandals, if you have them, slapping against the dusty ground, and the day's only begun. So let's brace ourselves for the next challenge, stepping into the world of work, where the real grit of ancient Greece awaits. You've staggered through the sweaty haze of an Athenian morning, 450 BCE, your chiton flapping precariously after a breakfast that could double as a paving stone. The sun's climbing, scorching the dusty streets, and you're barely holding it together in this cradle of European civilization. But if you're a man in ancient Greece, the real test looms larger than a hangover after a Paris wine tasting, military duty. Forget the cozy notion of signing up for a weekend in the reserves. Here, being a free male citizen means you're a soldier by default, whether you're a farmer dreaming of olive groves or a potter with clay stained hands. As you lace up your sandals or trudge barefoot cursing the gods, you're about to discover that war isn't just a job, it's your civic duty, your social badge, and sometimes a one-way ticket to Hades. Welcome to a world where even philosophers like Socrates traded tomes for spears. Step into the agora, and the air buzzes with more than market chatter. You're not just dodging donkeys and merchants, you're dodging the weight of expectation. From your teens, you've been drilled in the phalanx, that iconic Greek formation where you stand shoulder to shoulder with your neighbors, clutching a heavy round shield and praying the guy next to you doesn't trip. It's not a game. This is survival training for a world where war is as constant as the Aegean sun. In Athens, you start formal training at 18, 2 grueling years, learning to march, thrust a spear, and hold your ground in a wall of shields. But don't think it ends there. Once trained, you're on call for decades, ready to drop your plow or pottery wheel the moment the city summons you. Imagine swapping your morning commute in Berlin for a march to a battlefield where arrows don't care about your day job. Here's the shock that'll jolt you awake faster than a double espresso in Rome. You have to supply your own gear. No government-issued armor, no shiny barracks stocked with weapons. If you want to survive the next clash with Sparta or some uppity neighboring polis, you'd better have a bronze helmet, breastplate, greaves, and a hoplite shield tucked away in your mud brick home. Can't afford it? Tough luck. You'll be fighting lightly armed, which is Greek code for first to die. Picture yourself scrounging for leather scraps or borrowing a dented spear, knowing your life depends on it. The wealthy strut into battle like bronze-clad demigods, while you, the average Athenian, are stuck with whatever you can cobble together. It's not just bring your own lunch, it's bring your own survival kit, and the stakes are higher than a London Stock Exchange crash. If you're in Sparta, it's a whole different beast. Spartan boys are torn from their families at 7, thrown into the Agog, a brutal boot camp that makes a modern military academy look like a spa retreat. Starvation, whippings, and isolation forge them into warriors who'd rather die than flinch. By the time they're your age, they're lean, mean, and ready to make enemies regret crossing their path. Athens is gentler, but don't get too comfortable. Even here, you're training under the sun's glare, your muscles burning as you practice formations that could mean the difference between victory and a one-way trip to the underworld. Socrates himself, that sandal-wearing philosopher you'll meet later in the Agora, fought in battles, not with witty comebacks, but with actual weapons. If he can do it, you've got no excuse, right? The reality of war is never far away. Athens and Spartans are locked in a near-constant grudge match, with the Peloponnesian War looming like a storm cloud. Smaller conflicts flare up over trade routes or a neighbor's sassy attitude, and you're expected to march out, shield in hand, no questions asked. The phalanx isn't just a tactic, it's a pact, a bond with the men beside you, each one trusting you not to break the line. You're not fighting for glory or gold. You're fighting for Athens, for your family, for the right to keep breathing. But let's not sugarcoat it. Battles are brutal. Arrows fly, spears clash, and wounds fester without antibiotics. A cut that'd send you to a clinic in Copenhagen could kill you here, slowly and painfully, with only garlic compresses and prayers to Apollo as your medical plan. Pause for a moment to soak in the weight of this. In your modern European life, you might grumble about a long workday or a crowded metro in Madrid. These Greek men, sweating in their borrowed armor, faced death as a civic chore. Their training wasn't a choice, it was a necessity, woven into the fabric of their society like the threads of your chiton. Yet this same society produced ideas that still shape the world, from democracy to philosophy. You can't help but feel a grudging respect. While you're sipping coffee in a Viennese cafe, scrolling through news of distant conflicts, these men were the conflict, their lives on the line for a city-state smaller than a modern county. Their courage, born of necessity, laid the groundwork for the freedoms you enjoy in Brussels or Lisbon. Now picture yourself in the training yard, your wooden practice sword heavy in your hand. The sun beats down, your tunic sticks to your skin, and the drill master's shouts echo like a temple priest's chant. You're learning to move as one, to hold the phalanx line, to trust the man beside you. It's exhausting, it's terrifying, and strangely unifying. The agora, just beyond the yard, hums with life, merchants, philosophers, and stray goats. But here it's just you, your shield, and the promise of battles to come. You're not a warrior by choice. You're a warrior by birthright, a citizen soldier in a world where peace is just a pause between wars. The gods might be watching, but they're not helping, and your survival depends on your grit and the guy next to you. This military life, harsh as it is, reveals the heart of ancient Greek society. These men, who trained under the same sun now burning your shoulders, didn't just fight, they built a civilization. Their battles protected the ideas that flowered in Athens' assembly halls and theaters, ideas that still resonate in Paris lecture rooms and London libraries. As you wipe the sweat from your brow, you realize the true shock. This wasn't just duty, it was identity. Your modern life, with its safe offices and volunteer armies, feels like a luxury these Greeks could only dream of. They fought, bled, and died, yet still found time to debate justice and beauty. So as you sling your shield over your shoulder, ready to face the day's next challenge, you're left wondering, could you match their strength? Let's move on to see how the women of Greece navigated their own battles, just as fierce but far less celebrated. You've trudged through the blistering streets of Athens, 450 BCE, your cheek barely holding together after a breakfast that could chip a tooth and a military drill that left your arms aching. The sun's climbing higher, painting the city in a golden haze, but for half the population, the day's challenges are only beginning. If you're a woman in ancient Greece, the cradle of European civilization offers you no shield, no spear, no voice in the agora's clamor. Instead, your world is a quieter, harsher one, confined to the shadows of a mud brick home where the gods seem to have forgotten you. While men march to battle or debate in the assembly, you're tethered to a life of domestic toil, your worth measured by the loom and the cradle. As you step into this role, prepare for a reality that makes your modern European life, whether in a bustling Paris cafe or a serene Stockholm flat, feel like a gift from Athena herself. Dawn breaks, and you're up before the roosters, not because you're eager, but because the household waits for no one. Your home, that cramped, goat-adjacent box, is your kingdom, but it's a kingdom without applause. You're the CEO of chores, spinning wool, weaving cloth, grinding barley into flour, and fetching water from the Agora's fountain if the men haven't already claimed it. No coffee machine hums in the corner, no dishwasher spares your hands. Instead, you're hunched over a stone quern, your back screaming as you turn grain into the next batch of joyless maza. If your family owns slaves, a rare luxury, you might oversee their work, but that's just trading one burden for another. Children tug at your tunic, demanding care, while the men head out to the gymnasium or the assembly, leaving you to keep the household from crumbling like an overbaked barley loaf. It's a relentless cycle, and there's no day off, no weekend retreat to a Copenhagen spa to ease the strain. Here's the shock that'll hit you harder than a London rush hour crowd. In Athens, you have fewer rights than the amphora you hold this morning. You can't vote, can't own land outright, can't even step outside without a male escort unless you want the neighbors whispering you're a courtesan, or worse, a Spartan. Your life is confined to the gynekaion, the women's quarters, a dim corner of the house where sunlight is as scarce as freedom. Through latticework windows, you catch glimpses of the world, merchants shouting, philosophers pontificating, but you're not part of it. Education? If you're lucky, you might learn to read a little, enough to manage household accounts, but philosophy, rhetoric, or geometry, those are for the boys. Your training is in domesticity, your purpose to marry well, bear sons, and fade into the background. Imagine being sidelined in a Berlin boardroom or a Rome courtroom, your voice unheard, your presence barely tolerated. That's your reality here, every single day. Marriage comes early, often in your teens, to a man twice your age, chosen by your father like a trade deal sealed over watered down wine. Love is a luxury, not a guarantee. Your dowry is the real currency. You're not a partner, but a contract, your value tied to the sons you'll produce. Childbirth is a battlefield, with no midwives trained in modern medicine, no hospitals like those in Brussels. A difficult birth could claim your life or your child's, a risk as real as any warrior's. Your days revolve around the loom, the kitchen, and the cradle, each task a silent testament to your endurance. Yet there's no glory in it, no statues in the agora, no odes sung at festivals. You're the backbone of the household, but in Athens, that backbone is expected to stay invisible, bending under the weight of duty. But let's turn to Sparta, where the script flips, though not without its own thorns. Spartan women, unlike their Athenian sisters, are educated, trained to run, wrestle, and throw javelins under the same sun that scorches your chitin. They own land, speak freely, and move through the streets without a male shadow. Sounds liberating, right? Not so fast. Your freedom comes with a catch. Your primary role is to birth strong warriors for Sparta's relentless war machine. Fail to produce a healthy son, and you're a disappointment to the state. Your education, reading, writing, even poetry, serves the same grim purpose, to make you a better mother of soldiers. Imagine training for a marathon in Amsterdam, only to be told your only prize is a child who will march to war. Spartan women may walk taller than Athenians, but their chains are just forged differently, bound by the state's obsession with military might. Pause to let this sink in. In your modern European life, you might juggle meetings in Lisbon or chase deadlines in Vienna with rights and opportunities the Greeks couldn't dream of. These women, whether in Athens' shadows or Sparta's training fields, lived lives of quiet heroism, their labor holding up a civilization that rarely acknowledged them. Athenian women wove the cloth that clothed philosophers, ground the grain that fed warriors, and raised the children who debate democracy. Spartan women, with their athletic prowess, ensured the survival of a city-state that shaped Western military ideals. Yet both were denied the spotlight, their stories buried under the marble grandeur of temples and statues. You can't help but feel a pang of gratitude for your modern freedoms, where a woman's voice can echo in boardrooms or parliaments from Stockholm to Madrid. As you stand in the gynekeion, your hands raw from spinning wool, you glimpse the world beyond through a narrow window. The agora hums with life, men arguing, gods worshipped, ideas born. But you're on the outside, your role vital yet unseen. The loom in your hands is more than a tool. It's a lifeline, weaving not just cloth, but the fabric of a society that thrives on your sacrifice. These women, Athenian or Spartan, didn't just endure, they carved out meaning in a world that offered them little. Their resilience, like the threads they spun, holds together the tapestry of ancient Greece, a civilization that gave us democracy, art, and philosophy. Your modern life, with its equal opportunities and electric lights, feels like a gift these women could only imagine. So as you set down your spindle, let's step into the next challenge, navigating the democratic dream that excluded you entirely. You've endured the scorching Athenian morning of 450 BCE, wrestling with a chiton that's more bedsheet than fashion, choking down a barley brick, and, if you're a man, sweating through military drills that make a London marathon seem like a stroll. If you're a woman, you're still catching your breath from the endless grind of domestic life, hidden in the shadows of your mud brick home. Now, as the sun climbs higher, bathing Athens in a golden glare, you step into the agora, the pulsing heart of the city. This is where the cradle of European civilization beats loudest, where ideas are born and democracy, the pride of Athens, takes center stage. But don't get too excited. In this world, democracy is less a shining beacon and more a gated club, and you, along with most of the city, are likely on the outside looking in. As you weave through the shouting merchants and stray goats, prepare to discover a system that's as revolutionary as it is ruthless, where even success can land you in exile. The agora is a whirlwind of noise and life, a chaotic tapestry of vendors hawking olives, philosophers spouting riddles, and the ever-present scent of dust and sacrifices. You're not just here to barter for figs or dodge donkey droppings. You're standing in the birthplace of democracy, a concept that echoes in the parliaments of Brussels and Berlin today. Athens, in the 5th century BCE, boasts a system where free male citizens gather in the ecclesia, the assembly, to propose laws, debate war strategies, and vote on everything from taxes to temple repairs. It's a radical idea, born from the reforms of Cleisthenes in 508 BCE, giving ordinary men, not kings or tyrants, a voice in their city's fate. Imagine a town hall meeting in Stockholm, but instead of bureaucrats, it's potters, farmers, and fishermen shouting over each other, deciding the future of a city-state smaller than a modern county. You're not just a citizen, you're a legislator, a juror, an amateur strategist, all rolled into one chaotic, sunburned package. But here's the shock that'll hit you like a cold shower in Copenhagen. This democracy excludes almost everyone. If you're a woman, a slave, a foreigner, or medic, or even a child, you're as welcome in the ecclesia as a goat in a temple, meaning not at all. Only free men born to Athenian parents and over 18 get a say, and that's barely 10% of the population. Picture standing in the agora, watching men file into the assembly while you, woman, slave, or tax-paying medic, are left to sweep the dust or haggle for bread. The Parthenon rises in the distance, a symbol of Athenian pride, built by slaves who'll never vote. The irony is thicker than the olive oil in your kitchen. The world's first democracy, celebrated as the root of European governance, silences 90% of its people, including those whose labor keeps the city alive. Your modern right to vote, whether in Lisbon or Vienna, feels like a miracle these Greeks couldn't fathom. If you're one of the lucky few who qualify, democracy isn't a spectator sport, it's a full-time job. You're expected to show up to the ecclesia, a sprawling gathering of thousands on a hillside, to argue, vote, and sometimes serve in roles chosen by lottery. Yes, lottery. One day, you're selling figs. The next, you're managing the city's treasury or judging a murder trial, no qualifications required. Imagine your neighbor, who can't even parallel park in Madrid, suddenly running NATO. That's Athenian democracy, chaotic, exhilarating, and terrifyingly amateur. You debate laws with the same passion you'd bring to a football match in Rome, shouting down rivals while the sun roasts your shoulders. But don't get too comfortable. Success can be your downfall, thanks to a peculiar practice called ostracism, the ancient world's version of a reality show eviction. Ostracism is where this democracy shows its teeth. Once a year, Athenians gather to decide if anyone's getting too big for their sandals. If someone, a war hero, a charismatic speaker, or just a guy with suspiciously good hair, seems too powerful, you write their name on a broken pottery shard, an ostracon, and vote to exile them for 10 years. No trial, no defense, just pack your chaton and leave. The shock deepens. You don't need to be a criminal. Being too popular, too influential, or too annoying could land you 6,000 votes and a one-way ticket to nowhere. Aristides, dubbed the Just, was exiled because people got sick of hearing how virtuous he was. Themistocles, the genius behind the victory at Salamis, got the boot for being too cocky. Imagine being kicked out of Paris for winning too many elections. Ostracism was meant to protect democracy from tyrants, but it often punished brilliance, a brutal reminder that even in Athens, equality came with an edge. Pause to let this sink in. In your modern European life, you might grumble about bureaucracy or long queues at polling stations in London. These Athenians, sweating in their tunics, built the world's first democracy with nothing but grit and a few pottery shards. Their system, flawed and exclusive, laid the groundwork for the parliaments and voting booths you take for granted. Yet, it was a high-stakes game where participation was mandatory and success could cost you your home. You can't help but feel a twinge of awe while you sip coffee in a Berlin cafe, scrolling through election results. These men were shouting their votes under a blazing sun, knowing one wrong move could mean exile. Their resilience, their willingness to grapple with power and its perils, shaped the ideas that still govern Europe today. As you stand in the agora, the clamor of democracy swirling around you, you're struck by the paradox. This is the city that gave us the concept of citizen rule, yet it barred most of its people from the table. The slaves hauling marble for the Parthenon, the women weaving cloth in the gynekion, the medics paying taxes without a voice. All were silenced, their labor invisible but essential. You glance at the ostraca scattered in the dust, each one a vote, a verdict, a story. The Greeks didn't just survive the system, they thrived, building a civilization that echoes in every European capital. Your modern right to vote, to speak, to be heard feels like a gift these Athenians could only dream of. So as you turn away from the ecclesia, let's face the next challenge, staying healthy in a world where medicine is more hope than science. You've staggered through an Athenian day in 450 BCE, your chaton fraying from a brutal morning of hauling water, chewing stone-hard maza, and dodging the agora's chaos or military drills. The sun blazes overhead, turning Athens into a furnace, and you're barely holding on in this cradle of European civilization. But now, as you wipe the sweat from your brow, a new threat looms, one that makes your modern flu, jab in Berlin, or a quick visit to a Lisbon clinic seem like divine intervention. If you fall ill in ancient Greece, you're not checking into a hospital or popping an aspirin. Healthcare here is a precarious dance of herbs, prayers, and blind hope, where a scratch could send you to Hades faster than a Spartan spear. As you clutch your aching side, perhaps from a dodgy sip of agora water, prepare to navigate a world where medicine is more guesswork than science, and survival is a miracle. Your home, that mud brick oven with its snoring goat, offers no sterile sickbay. If you're feverish, coughing, or nursing a cut from a clumsy encounter with a pottery shard, you're stuck lying on your straw mat, surrounded by family who are as clueless as you. There's no NHS hotline, no pharmacy down the street in Rome. Instead, you're at the mercy of local knowledge, which might mean a neighbor who fancies herself an herbalist or a relative muttering prayers to Asclepius, the god of healing. Picture yourself sweating through your tunic, hoping the gods take pity while someone presses a damp cloth to your forehead, less out of medical wisdom and more because it's all they've got. The air is thick with the scent of dust and desperation, and your only hospital is the corner of your one-room home, where the goat's bleeding feels like a mocking commentary on your plight. Here's the shock that'll jolt you awake, faster than a Copenhagen espresso. Medicine in ancient Greece is a gamble, and the odds aren't in your favor. The Greeks, for all their brilliance, didn't know about bacteria or viruses. Instead, they leaned on the theory of the four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, developed by Hippocrates, the so-called father of medicine. Feeling feverish? Too much blood. Time to slice a vein and let it flow. Coughing up a storm? Excess phlegm? Better starve yourself or chug some vinegar. Sad and sluggish? That's black bile, so maybe take a walk by the sea and brood poetically. It's less science and more philosophy dressed up as a cure, with treatments that sound like a prank from a mischievous god. Imagine going to a doctor in Paris and being told to stare at the Seine to fix your flu. That's the level of logic you're dealing with here. If herbs are your only hope, you're in for a wild ride. Your neighbor might offer crushed poppy seeds, which could dull the pain or send you into a haze that's more dream than relief. Boiled figs, garlic paste, or a compress of something scraped off a goat might be pressed into your wound, with results ranging from miraculous to miserable. Surgery? It's a last resort, performed without anesthesia or antiseptics. A simple cut could turn septic, and a broken bone might mean a lifetime limp. Or worse, picture a surgeon with an iron knife, a bone saw, and a prayer while you bite down on a leather strap to muffle your screams. Childbirth is even grimmer. Midwives, skilled but limited, guide women through deliveries that are as dangerous as a battlefield. In Athens, the mortality rate for mothers and infants is heartbreakingly high, a stark contrast to the maternity wards of Stockholm or Madrid. Yet there's a flicker of brilliance in this medical mess. Hippocrates, whose name still echoes in modern medical oaths, insisted on observing patients closely, noting their diet, environment, and even mood. His approach, rejecting the idea that illness was divine punishment, was revolutionary, planting seeds for the scientific method that thrives in European universities today. Temples of Asclepius, dotting the Greek landscape, weren't just shrines, but healing sanctuaries where patients sought cures through rest, clean air, and dreams interpreted by priests. These weren't hospitals as you know them, but they offered a glimmer of hope in a world where a fever could be a death sentence. You can't help but marvel at the Greeks' tenacity, turning desperation into the foundations of Western medicine while grappling with tools no better than a farmer's guesswork. Pause to let this sink in. In your modern European life, you might complain about a long wait at a clinic in Vienna or a pricey prescription in Lisbon. These Athenians, sweating through fevers on straw mats, had no such luxuries. A scratch, a cough, or a difficult birth could end you, yet they pressed on, their resilience as vital as the herbs they crushed. Their medical theories, flawed as they were, laid the groundwork for the hospitals and research labs that keep you healthy today. You're lying there, your side aching, the goats bleating a cruel soundtrack, and you realize the true shock. Survival was a daily triumph. Your modern medicine cabinet, stocked with painkillers and bandages, feels like a gift from the gods these Greeks prayed to. As you clutch your damp cloth, the agora's hum drifts through your window, a reminder of the world beyond your sickbed. The Greeks didn't just endure illness, they sought meaning in it, weaving prayers and herbs into a fragile hope for recovery. Their efforts, crude as they seem, gave us the Hippocratic Oath, still sworn by doctors from London to Athens. You can't help but feel a grudging respect for their grit, their ability to face death with nothing but garlic and faith. Your modern life, with its clean hospitals and instant remedies, feels like a miracle they could only dream of. So as you pray to Asclepius for relief, let's move to the next challenge, the chaotic world of Greek theater, where emotions run as wild as the gods themselves. You've stumbled through a punishing Athenian day in 450 BCE, your body battered from hauling water, chewing granite-like maza, and dodging the agora's chaos or the relentless drills of military life. If you're a woman, you're still reeling from the invisible grind of domestic toil. The sun's high now, scorching the dusty streets of Athens, but as you catch your breath, a new spectacle beckons in this cradle of European civilization. You're heading to the open-air theater, a hillside carved for drama, or maybe the agora, where a sandal-clad philosopher is about to ruin your day with a question. In ancient Greece, theater and philosophy aren't just pastimes. They're the pulse of a culture that thrives on emotion and ideas. As you limp toward the theater of Dionysus, or brace for a verbal ambush, prepare for a world where stories stab the heart and questions unravel your soul, all under a sun that offers no mercy. Picture yourself filing into the theater of Dionysus, shoulder to shoulder with thousands of sweaty Athenians, the stone seats as forgiving as your breakfast bread. This isn't a cozy West End show in London or a chic Parisian opera house. It's a marathon of tragedy and comedy, running from dawn to dusk with no intermission, no snacks, and definitely no bathroom breaks, unless you count a nearby bush. The plays performed during festivals like the Dionysia are a civic duty, a religious ritual, and a roller coaster for the soul. Tragedies by Sophocles or Euripides gut you with tales of betrayed gods and broken families, leaving you weeping in unison with the crowd. Comedies, like those of Aristophanes, mock politicians and philosophers with a precision that makes a modern satire show seem tame. Imagine a stand-up routine in Berlin, but with actors in giant phallic costumes poking fun at everyone from Socrates to Spartan. You're not just watching, you're shouting, booing, maybe tossing an olive if the play flops. Here's the shock that'll jolt you awake faster than a Lisbon espresso. Theater isn't just entertainment, it's a mirror of Athens' soul, and you're expected to dive in. The audience is as loud as the actors, hissing, cheering, or arguing mid-performance, like a Twitter storm in tunics. Actors in towering masks and platform shoes, men only, even for female roles, belt out lines that echo your own fears and joys. The chorus dances and chants, their commentary sharp as a knife, slicing through the city's politics and pride. If you're late or rowdy, you might face a fine because in Athens, theater is serious business. It's democracy with stage lights, a place where you confront life's chaos and leave changed, or at least with a sore backside from those stone seats. Your modern Netflix binge feels like a pale shadow compared to this raw communal spectacle. Now, as you stagger out of the theater, head spinning from 3 days of emotional carnage, you wander into the agora and straight into a trap. A man in a tattered cloak, barefoot and grinning like he knows your secrets, steps forward. It's Socrates, and he's got a question. What is justice? Before you can dodge, you're sucked into a 3-hour mental spiral, your brain twisting like a labyrinth as he dismantles your every answer. This isn't a cozy seminar in a Vienna lecture hall. Philosophy in ancient Greece is a street fight, loud and relentless, where bystanders become victims. Socrates, Plato, and their ilk don't write books. They argue in public, dragging you into debates about truth, beauty, or why your life's unexamined. It's exhausting, exhilarating, and a little humiliating, like being schooled by a barista in Rome who's secretly a genius. Pause to soak in the absurdity. In your modern European life, you might scroll through philosophy quotes on your phone or catch a play in a cushy Amsterdam theater. These Greeks, sweating in their tunics, made theater and philosophy the heartbeat of their world. Their plays, performed on those unforgiving stone benches, still echo in London's Globe Theatre. Their questions, tossed like daggers in the agora, laid the foundations for the universities of Paris and Oxford. You can't help but feel a grudging respect. While you sip coffee in a Berlin cafe, these Athenians were wrestling with life's biggest questions under a sun that burned as fiercely as their minds. Their resilience, their passion for ideas, turned hardship into a legacy that shapes Europe today. So as you dodge Socrates' next question, let's brace for the day's end, where survival itself becomes the ultimate triumph. You've limped through a relentless day in Athens, 450 BCE, your body bruised from hauling water, your stomach grumbling over stone-hard maza, and your mind reeling from dodging Socrates' questions or the agora's chaos. The sun, merciless as a Greek god, has scorched your shoulders, yet here you stand, still breathing in this cradle of European civilization. But let's be honest, you wouldn't last a day. The heat, the hunger, the constant threat of war or exile would crush you before lunch, making your morning commute in Paris seem like a holiday. Here's the shock that hits like a thunderbolt from Zeus. The Greeks didn't just survive this, they thrived. From their mud brick hovels, they built temples that stand in Athens, wrote plays that echo in London's theaters, and birthed ideas that shape Berlin's lecture halls. As you slump under an olive tree, your modern life, with its hot showers and voting rights, feels like a gift. So close your eyes, let the hum of history lull you, and dream of a world where resilience forged a legacy. In the 5th century BCE, ancient Greece shimmered like a beacon in the Mediterranean, its city-states weaving a tapestry of brilliance and brutality that still threads through the cultural fabric of modern Europe. This was no unified nation, but a constellation of independent polis: Athens, Sparta, Corinth, Thebes, each a star burning with its own ambitions, rivalries, and quirks. Picture a world where dusty streets echoed with the clatter of sandals and the shouts of philosophers, where temples gleamed under a merciless sun, and where ideas as enduring as the Parthenon were born amidst constant strife. This era, often hailed as the Golden Age of Greece, was a crucible of innovation, forging democracy, philosophy, and the art that resonate in the lecture halls of Paris and the parliaments of Brussels. Yet it was also a time of relentless conflict, where survival demanded as much grit as genius, a paradox that makes the Greeks' achievements all the more astonishing. These city-states, scattered across rugged hills and rocky shores, were less a country and more a squabbling family, united by language, religion, and a shared sense of being Hellenes, yet divided by fierce pride. Athens, with its bustling agora and fledgling democracy, strutted as the intellectual heart, its citizens debating laws while sipping watered-down wine. Sparta, a fortress of discipline, churned out warriors who'd rather die than dine on anything as soft as Athenian ideals. Corinth grew fat on trade, its ports humming like a modern Rotterdam, while Thebes nursed grudges that would later boil over. Each polis was a world unto itself, with its own laws, gods, and grudges, yet they shared a cultural pulse that beat strongest in the 5th century, after a victory that could have been scripted by Homer himself, the defeat of the Persian Empire. The Greco-Persian Wars, spanning 499 to 449 BCE, were the crucible that forged this golden age. When Persia's vast armies, led by Darius I and later Xerxes I, swept toward Greece, the city-states banded together, a rare moment of unity that makes a modern EU summit look like child's play. Victories at Marathon in 490 BCE and Salamis in 480 BCE weren't just military triumphs. They were a defiant middle finger to an empire that dwarfed Greece in size and wealth. Athens emerged as the hero, its navy slicing through Persian ships like a hot knife through feta. This triumph didn't just save Greece, it sparked a surge of confidence, fueling the democratic experiments and cultural explosions that followed. Imagine the buzz in Athens' agora, where potters and poets alike toasted their survival, unaware they were laying the foundations for European civilization. But here's the twist that stings like a sip of unfiltered agora water. This golden age was built on a foundation of fragility. The unity forged against Persia crumbled faster than a stale matzah loaf, as Athens and Sparta turned their swords on each other. The Peloponnesian War, brewing by 431 BCE, pitted Athens' democratic swagger against Sparta's ironclad discipline, a clash of ideals as brutal as any battlefield. Cities that once stood shoulder to shoulder now bickered over trade routes and pride, their alliances shifting like sand under the Aegean sun. This wasn't a peaceful utopia, but a pressure cooker where every polis fought to carve its name into history. The Greeks' ability to create amidst such chaos, sculpting statues, staging tragedies, debating truth, makes their legacy all the more remarkable. The cultural achievements of this era gleam like the marbles of the Parthenon, still standing proud above Athens. Democracy, born from Cleisthenes' reforms in 508 BCE, gave citizens a voice, a radical idea that echoes in the ballot boxes of Berlin and Lisbon. Philosophers like Socrates prowled the agora, poking at minds with questions sharper than a hoplite's spear, while Plato and Aristotle waited in the wings to shape Western thought. Theaters carved into hillsides roared with the tragedies of Sophocles and the biting comedies of Aristophanes, their words still performed in London's West End. Even science took its first steps, with Hippocrates rejecting divine curses for medicine and Anaxagoras daring to call the sun a fiery rock. These weren't just ideas, they were revolutions, born in a world where war and hardship were as common as dust. Yet this brilliance came at a cost. The Greeks lived under a sun that burned as fiercely as their ambitions, their lives a daily grind of fetching water, dodging plagues, and praying to capricious gods. Slaves, women, and foreigners, most of the population, were excluded from the democracy that dazzled the world, their labor the unseen scaffolding of Athens' glory. Imagine a modern European city where only a handful vote while the rest toil in silence. The Greeks' achievements, from temples to theorems, were forged in this crucible of inequality and strife, a testament to a resilience that makes modern complaints about Wi-Fi or train delays seem trivial. Their legacy, etched in marble and ideas, still shapes the universities, theaters, and governments of Europe, a reminder that brilliance can bloom in the harshest soil. As the 5th century unfolded, Greece stood at a crossroads, its city-states both rivals and kin, their triumphs and tragedies intertwined. The Golden Age was no golden idol, but a stormy sea of conflict and creativity, where every idea was a hard-won victory. The Greeks didn't just survive their world, they sculpted it into a foundation for Western civilization, their voices echoing through the centuries to the lecture halls of Paris and the streets of Athens today. So, as the sun sets on this overview, let the hum of their story lull you, a whisper of resilience that invites you to dream of a world where ideas outlast empires. In the early 5th century BCE, ancient Greece faced a storm that could have snuffed out its fledgling civilization like a candle in a Mediterranean gale. The Persian Empire, a juggernaut stretching from Egypt to India, cast its shadow over the scattered city-states, its armies dwarfing anything the Greeks could muster. Yet in a twist worthy of a Sophoclean tragedy, these fractious polis, Athens, Sparta, and their allies, stood firm, forging a legacy that echoes in the democratic halls of modern Europe. The Greco-Persian Wars, spanning 499 to 449 BCE, were no mere skirmishes, but a clash of worlds, where grit and guile outshone sheer numbers. Picture a David and Goliath tale, with Athens' navy slicing through Persian fleets like a hot knife through feta, and Spartan warriors holding Thermopylae's narrow pass like a myth carved in blood. The spark came in 499 BCE when Greek cities in Ionia rebelled against Persian rule, igniting a conflict that drew in Athens and its allies. By 490 BCE, Darius III's forces landed at Marathon, only to be routed by a smaller Athenian army, their phalanxes a wall of bronze and defiance. A decade later, Xerxes averts massive invasion, bridges of boats spanning the Hellespont, armies drinking rivers dry, met its match at Salamis in 480 BCE, where Athenian ships danced through narrow straits, sinking Persian dreams. These victories weren't just battles won, they were a defiant roar proving tiny Greece could humble an empire. The unity, fragile as a clay amphora, held long enough to save a culture that would seed Europe's parliaments and philosophies. Yet here's the sting that bites like unfiltered agro wine. This triumph sowed division. Athens, basking in glory, turned the Delian League, a naval alliance, into its own empire, lording over allies and stoking Sparta's ire. The seeds of the Peloponnesian War, a fratricidal clash, were planted in victory's glow. Still, the Greco-Persian Wars galvanized Greece's golden age, fueling confidence that birthed democracy and drama. Imagine modern Europe without these battles. No ballot boxes in Brussels, no theaters in London. The Greeks, sweating under a relentless sun, didn't just survive. They reshaped history, their courage a beacon for every European capital today. So as the dust of Marathon settles, let their story lull you, a whisper of defiance that outlasts empires. In the 5th century BCE, ancient Greece, fresh from humbling the Persian Empire, turned its swords inward, igniting a civil war that scorched its golden age like a wildfire through an olive grove. The Peloponnesian War, raging from 431 to 404 BCE, pitted Athens against Sparta in a clash that was less a battle for land and more a duel of ideals. Its echoes still felt in the democratic halls of modern Europe. Athens, with its swaggering democracy and naval might, faced off against Sparta, a fortress of discipline where warriors were forged like iron in a blacksmith's fire. Picture a family feud writ large, with city-states choosing sides, their alliances shifting like sand under the Aegean sun. This wasn't just war. It was a tragedy, tearing apart the civilization that birthed the ideas now cherished in Brussels and Berlin. Athens, flush with confidence from victories at Marathon and Salamis, had transformed the Delian League into its own empire, lording over allies with a hubris that would make a Greek god blush. Its navy ruled the seas, its agora buzzed with philosophers, and its democracy gleamed like the Parthenon's marble. Sparta, meanwhile, was a different beast, its citizens trained from childhood to value duty over comfort, their lives as austere as a winter's night in Stockholm. The Peloponnesian League, led by Sparta, bristled at Athens' arrogance, seeing it as a threat to their way of life. By 431 BCE, tensions snapped like a brittle amphora, and war erupted, splitting Greece into factions as bitter as a modern football rivalry in Madrid. Battles raged on land and sea, from the fields of Attica to the waves of the Aegean, each side convinced it was the true heir to Hellenic glory. The war's cost was staggering, a grim reminder that even the brightest civilizations can devour themselves. Athens' bold strategies, like its disastrous Sicilian expedition in 415 BCE, bled its resources dry, like a gambler betting the family farm. Sparta, backed by Persian gold, outlasted its rival, tightening a noose around Athens until its surrender in 404 BCE. Cities that once stood united against Persia now lay in ruins, their fields trampled, their populations decimated by plague and famine. The irony stings like unfiltered wine from an agora stall. The Greeks, who gave Europe democracy and drama, nearly destroyed themselves in a feud fueled by pride. Imagine a modern Europe where Paris and Berlin turned their might inward, shredding the unity that holds the continent together. Yet amidst this chaos, the Greeks' resilience shone through. Even as their cities burned, they produced works that endure in London's theaters and Vienna's lecture halls. Thucydides, chronicling the war with a historian's keen eye, gave us insights into power and human nature that still guide political thought. The war weakened Greece, paving the way for Macedonia's rise under Philip II, but it couldn't dim the cultural flame that lit Western civilization. The Greeks' ability to create amidst destruction, writing tragedies, debating ethics, building temples, makes their legacy a beacon for modern Europe. Picture a world without their ideas, no ballot boxes in Lisbon, no philosophical seminars in Paris. Their survival through this self-inflicted storm is a testament to a spirit that refused to break. As the Peloponnesian War's dust settled, Greece emerged scarred but enduring, its city-states battered yet still dreaming. The conflict, brutal as it was, revealed the Greeks' capacity to wrestle with chaos and emerge with ideas that outlast empires. Their story, whispered in the marble ruins of Athens, reminds modern Europeans of the fragility of unity and the power of resilience. So as the echoes of battle fade, let this tale of strife and survival lull you, a quiet nod to a civilization that fought itself but gifted the world its soul. In the 5th century BCE, ancient Greece bloomed like a defiant olive tree in rocky soil, its cultural achievements casting a long shadow over modern Europe's theaters, universities, and parliaments. Amid the dust of war and the grind of daily survival, the Greeks crafted a legacy of democracy, philosophy, and drama that shines brighter than the Parthenon's marble under an Athenian sun. Picture a world where barefoot philosophers sparred with ideas sharper than a Spartan spear, and hillside theaters roared with stories that still echo in London's West End and Paris's Odeon. This golden age, born in the crucible of conflict, was no serene idyll, but a testament to a people who turned hardship into brilliance, their creations forming the bedrock of Western civilization. Their audacity to think and dream amidst chaos remains a whisper of inspiration for modern Europe's restless minds. Democracy, sparked by Cleisthenes' reforms in 508 BCE, was Athens' boldest gift. Ordinary men, potters, farmers, not kings, gathered in the ecclesia, shouting over laws and wars like a rowdy pub debate in Dublin. This wasn't the polished democracy of Brussels. It was raw, chaotic, excluding women and slaves, yet revolutionary for giving citizens a voice. The idea that power could rest in the hands of the people, not gods or tyrants, took root here, sprouting into the ballot boxes of Berlin and Lisbon. Meanwhile, philosophy flourished like wildfire in the agora. Socrates, with his relentless questions, poked at truth like a mischievous child prodding a beehive, while Plato and Aristotle, his intellectual heirs, wove theories of ethics and logic that still anchor seminars in Vienna. Their debates, sharp as a sculptor's chisel, carved the foundations of Western thought. Theater, though, was Greece's beating heart. Carved into hillsides, venues like the Theater of Dionysus hosted festivals where Sophocles' tragedies tore at souls with tales of fate and hubris, and Aristophanes' comedies skewered politicians with a wit that would make a modern satirist blush. These weren't mere plays, but civic rituals, binding communities through laughter and tears. Imagine a London theater, but with no cushy seats, just stone benches and a crowd as rowdy as a football match in Rome. The Greeks' stories, performed under a blazing sun, explored human nature with a depth that still resonates in Europe's cultural halls. Their masks and choruses, their tales of gods and mortals, laid the groundwork for the dramas that fill modern stages from Athens to Amsterdam. Yet here's the sting that bites like a sip of sour Agra wine. This brilliance thrived in a world of scarcity and strife. While Greeks spun ideas that outlast empires, they toiled under a sun that scorched their tunics and gods that demanded constant appeasement. Slaves hauled marble for temples, women wove the cloth that clothed philosophers, yet both were silenced in the democracy they propped up. The contrast with modern Europe, where cultural access is a click away in Paris or a ticket in Stockholm, is stark. The Greeks' ability to create amidst such hardship, writing plays, questioning existence, building a civilization, makes their legacy a marvel. Their ideas, born in dust and sweat, still light up lecture halls and theaters across Europe, a testament to a spirit that refused to bend. As the 5th century's sun set, Greece's cultural achievements stood tall, their echoes shaping the modern world. From Athens' democratic experiments to its philosophical sparring and theatrical spectacles, the Greeks crafted a legacy that endures in every European capital. Their resilience, weaving brilliance from chaos, invites reflection on the grit it took to birth ideas that still guide us. So as their story whispers through the ages, let it lull you, a quiet nod to a people whose dreams outlasted their struggles. In the 5th century BCE, ancient Greece kindled a spark of reason that flickered like a lone torch in a storm, illuminating the path for modern Europe's scientific and medical traditions. While Athenians toiled under a relentless sun, their minds reached for the stars, crafting ideas that still shine in the laboratories of Berlin and the hospitals of Lisbon. This wasn't a world of gleaming microscopes or sterile clinics, but one where disease was a mystery and the cosmos a divine riddle. Yet from this crucible of hardship, the Greeks birthed science and medicine that defied their crude tools, their insights as bold as a hoplite's charge. Picture a dusty Agra where philosophers like Anaxagoras dared to call the sun a fiery rock, not a god, and Hippocrates, the father of medicine, traded divine curses for observation, laying foundations that echo in every European university today. Hippocrates, born around 460 BCE on the island of Kos, was Greece's medical maverick, his name still whispered in the oaths sworn by doctors from London to Rome. He rejected the notion that illness was a punishment from capricious gods, insisting instead on balance within the body. His theory of the four humors, blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, was less science and more poetic guesswork, like a bard spinning a tale of health. A fever meant too much blood, so leeches were summoned, a cough signaled excess phlegm, so fasting was prescribed. These treatments, as crude as a clay amphora, often did more harm than good, yet Hippocrates' emphasis on observing patients, their diet, mood, even the air they breathed, was revolutionary. Imagine a modern physician in Paris, minus the stethoscope, noting a patient's size under an olive tree. His methods, flawed but fearless, ceded the scientific rigor that thrives in Europe's medical schools. Beyond medicine, Greek minds probed the cosmos with a boldness that would make a modern astronomer blush. Anaxagoras, gazing at the heavens from Athens, declared the sun was no chariot of Apollo, but a massive burning stone, a claim so heretical it got him exiled, like a professor ousted from Oxford for questioning dogma. Pythagoras, though earlier, left a legacy of mathematical harmony, his theorems still taught in Stockholm classrooms. These thinkers, armed with little more than curiosity and papyrus, didn't just ponder, they challenged, their questions slicing through superstition like a spear through a Persian shield. Their work, born in a world of plagues and muddy water, laid the groundwork for the telescopes and equations that define modern science. The irony stings like a sip of unfiltered Agora wine. These pioneers worked in a world where a scratch could kill and a fever was a death knell. While modern Europeans pop aspirin or book scans in Vienna, the Greeks relied on garlic compresses and prayers to Asclepius, their healing god. Temples dedicated to him, scattered across Greece, served as proto-hospitals where patients sought cures through dreams and rituals under starlit roofs. Yet their resilience, thinking deeply while surrounded by disease and dust, was extraordinary. They didn't just survive, they sowed seeds of reason that bloomed into Europe's scientific revolution. Picture a world without their daring, no labs in Cambridge, no clinics in Madrid. Their legacy, forged in hardship, whispers of a courage that turned curiosity into progress. As the 5th century's sun dipped below Athens' hills, Greek science and medicine stood as fragile but defiant sparks. Their ideas, crude yet visionary, shaped a path from agora debates to modern Europe's lecture halls and operating rooms. The Greeks' ability to question, to observe, to dream amidst chaos invites awe, a quiet reminder of the grit behind their genius. So let their story soothe you, a nighttime tale of minds that lit the way for progress. As the 5th century BCE unfolded, ancient Greece sparkled like a lone star in the Mediterranean, its city-states crafting democracy and drama under a scorching sun. Yet beyond the dusty agora and marble temples, the world churned with empires and ideas that dwarfed Athens' ambitions, weaving a global tapestry as intricate as a loom in a Greek woman's hands. Picture a planet where Persian kings ruled roads longer than Europe's motorways, Chinese sages penned philosophies that still guide Beijing, and Indian mystics birthed a faith that echoes from Delhi to London's meditation halls. This was no isolated Hellenic bubble, but a vibrant stage where Greece's golden age played alongside giants, each shaping a legacy that resonates in modern Europe's cultural mosaic. The Greeks' brilliance, forged in hardship, was but one thread in a world of relentless creativity and conflict. The Persian Empire, stretching from Egypt's sands to India's rivers, loomed like a colossus over Greece. Under Darius the First and Xerxes the Revates, it was a marvel of organization, its royal road knitting together distant lands faster than a modern Eurostar from Paris to Brussels. Couriers raced messages across 2,700 kilometers, a postal system that would make a Stockholm logistics firm jealous. Persia's wealth and might, which nearly crushed Greece at Marathon and Salamis, fueled its grandeur but also its arrogance, a lesson in hubris that Athens would later mirror. While Greek hoplites clashed in phalanxes, Persian satraps governed provinces with a bureaucracy as precise as a Berlin spreadsheet. Their opulence a stark contrast to Greece's dusty simplicity. Yet, Persia's failure to conquer Greece ensured the survival of ideas that now underpin Europe's democratic ideals. Across the globe, China's spring and autumn period saw the Zhou dynasty fray like a worn out chiton, its feudal lords squabbling like Greek police. Amid this chaos, Confucius emerged, his teachings on harmony and duty weaving a moral fabric that still drapes East Asia. Picture a sage in a robe, not unlike Socrates, pondering ethics under a tree while Athens debated democracy. His ideas, scribbled on bamboo slips, shaped a civilization as enduring as Greece's, their echoes felt in modern Europe's fascination with Eastern philosophy, from yoga studios in Amsterdam to mindfulness apps in Lisbon. Confucius's focus on balance, not conquest, offered a counterpoint to Greece's martial fervor, a reminder that wisdom can bloom in turmoil as surely as in an agora. In India, the 5th century BCE glowed with spiritual fire. Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, had already attained enlightenment, his teachings spreading like ripples across a pond, challenging caste and craving with a serenity that would captivate modern Europe. While Athenians wrestled with gods and glory, Indian monks meditated under banyan trees, crafting a philosophy that now graces mindfulness retreats from Paris to Stockholm. Buddhism's emphasis on inner peace, born in a world as turbulent as Greece's, paralleled the Greek quest for truth, each culture sowing seeds that would cross oceans to shape global thought. Imagine a world without these ideas. No meditation classes in Berlin, no Zen gardens in London. The sting bites like sour wine from a Greek stall. While these civilizations thrived, they knew little of each other, their brilliance isolated by seas and mountains. Yet their parallel struggles against chaos, nature, and human pride mirror Greece's own. The Greeks, Persians, Chinese, and Indians, each in their corner of the world, crafted legacies that now intertwine in Europe's cultural hubs. Modern Europeans, sipping coffee in Vienna or voting in Brussels, owe a debt to this global tapestry where ideas outlasted empires. The Greeks' resilience, like that of their distant peers, turned hardship into history, a quiet triumph that whispers through the ages. So as this global stage dims, let its story lull you, a tale of minds that lit the world. In the 5th century BCE, ancient Greece glittered like a polished marble temple, its democracy and culture casting a glow that still illuminates modern Europe's parliaments and theaters. Yet beneath this radiant surface, the social fabric of Greece was frayed with inequalities, as stark as the shadows in an Athenian agora at dusk. Picture a bustling city where philosophers debated freedom while slaves hauled stone, women wove in silence, and foreigners paid taxes without a voice. This was no egalitarian utopia, but a society built on exclusion, where the brilliance of a few rested on the labor of many. The Greeks, toiling under a relentless sun, crafted a civilization that shaped London's lecture halls and Lisbon's laws. But their social hierarchy, as rigid as a Spartan phalanx, reveals a darker truth about the cost of their golden age. Slavery was the backbone of Greek society, as unyielding as the Parthenon's columns. Slaves, drawn from conquered lands or born into servitude, were not a race but a class, their lives as varied as the tasks they performed. In Athens, they cooked, cleaned, and cared for children in modest homes, or toiled in the silver mines of Laurion, where darkness and dust choked their lungs. Some, educated and skilled, taught grammar or managed accounts, yet remained property, their lives subject to a master's whim. Picture a modern European city where half the population works without rights, their labor invisible yet essential. The Greeks saw slavery as natural. Aristotle himself called some men slaves by nature, a chilling contrast to the democratic ideals touted in the Ecclesia. Their society thrived on this exploitation, a grim foundation for the art and ideas that echo in Berlin's museums. Women, too, bore the weight of exclusion, their lives as confined as the gynaikeon's walls. In Athens, they were barred from voting, owning land, or stepping into the agora without a male escort, their world a loom and a cradle under a sun that offered no freedom. Marriage, often to men twice their age, was a contract, not a choice, their value tied to sons who might one day vote. Spartan women, by contrast, trained like warriors and owned land, but their role was clear: produce soldiers or face disgrace. Imagine a woman in modern Paris, silenced in boardrooms, her worth measured by her womb. The Greeks' goddesses, Athena, Artemis, were worshipped, but real women were expected to fade into the shadows, their labor weaving the fabric of a civilization that rarely sang their praises. Foreigners, or medics, faced their own exile within Athens' walls. They paid taxes, ran businesses, and enriched the city's trade, yet were denied citizenship. Picture a modern Londoner contributing to the economy, but barred from voting, their voice muffled in a city they help sustain. The sting bites like sour wine from an agora stall. Athens' democracy, celebrated as Europe's root, was a privilege for a select few, leaving slaves, women, and medics, nearly 90% of the population, to toil in silence. Yet these marginalized groups propped up the Golden Age, their sweat and sacrifice enabling the philosophers and playwrights whose ideas still resonate in Vienna's lecture halls. The Greeks' brilliance, forged in this unequal world, is a paradox that humbles. While modern Europeans enjoy rights and representation, from Stockholm's parliaments to Madrid's streets, the Greeks built a civilization on the backs of the voiceless. Their resilience in creating democracy and drama amidst such injustice is a testament to their grit. The Parthenon, still standing, owes its stones to slaves. The plays of Sophocles were woven by women's hands. As the 5th century's sun set, Greece's legacy endured, a flawed but radiant beacon for Europe's future. This story, whispered through the ages, invites reflection on the cost of greatness, a quiet lullaby of struggle and survival. As the 5th century BCE waned, ancient Greece stood like a weathered olive tree, its roots deep in rocky soil, its branches stretching across time to shade modern Europe's cultural landscape. Despite wars and inequalities, the Greeks crafted a legacy that gleams in the parliaments of Brussels and the theaters of London. Their democracy, flawed yet bold, birthed the idea that people, not kings, could govern, a spark that lights ballot boxes in Lisbon today. Philosophers like Socrates and Plato, sparring in Athens' dusty agora, wove threads of logic and ethics that still run through Berlin's lecture halls. Greek tragedies and comedies roared from hillside stages, echo in Paris's Odeon, their stories of human struggle as timeless as marble. The sting bites like sour agora wine. This brilliance rose from a world of slaves and silenced women, yet its resilience endures. Modern Europeans, sipping coffee in Vienna, owe their freedoms to Greeks who dreamed big under a merciless sun. So, let their legacy lull you, a whisper of grit that shaped a continent. As the Athenian sun fades, its golden glow lingers on the Parthenon, whispering tales of a people who wove brilliance from dust. You've wandered their streets, felt their sweat, and marveled at their ideas, seeds of Europe's heart, still blooming in Berlin's halls and Lisbon's votes. Now, dear traveler, let your shoulders soften, your breath slow, like waves lapping a Mediterranean shore. The Greek's story, fierce yet fragile, drifts into the night, a lullaby for your weary mind. If your eyes still linger, share a thought. Where are you, Rome or Stockholm, as stars rise? Let this history wrap you like a warm cloak, easing you toward dreams where ancient voices hum. Tomorrow, another tale awaits, a whisper from time's deep well. For now, close your eyes, let Greece's legacy cradle you, and sleep, carried by the gentle tide of history.